Welcome back, my kings and princes. Today I want to share with you exactly what I did to make over $8,000 a month working as an English teacher in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to make this type of money even if you follow all the steps that I did to get to $8K a month, because the fact of the matter is I worked my ass off and I was working from sunup till sundown. I had very little free time. And the lifestyle that I was living was not at all sustainable, especially for those of you who have like long-term goals in mind and want to do like other stuff. So I didn't really get a chance to hang out with people except like right after work from my main job. But when I eventually got married in 2018, I decided I needed to slow down and I wanted to focus on family. So I took a pay cut. But at one point in time, for a while, for like about a year, as I said, I was making over 8K a month. And so if you're a lazy bum, you probably already clicked away. If not, let's get into it. I think it was around 2014. I had about a year left in university, and I was going to graduate with a degree in history and comparative religions. I had a double major. Not knowing exactly what I wanted to do to make money, I knew that I didn't want to go and continue my education, get a master's, a PhD, and be a scholar. It was just, I was lucky that I made it through, 10 years of college to get my bachelor's degree, because I graduated from high school about 10 years before that. So I took the advice of one of my friends, a Saudi friend, actually. He was one of my older roommates. He told me, hey, why don't you go and take a teaching certificate and come and try to teach in my country? So I was like, that's actually sounds like a pretty good idea. Let me check it out. So I looked around for a course in CELTA or TESOL, and I ended up finding one that was about $1,000, and it was in MSU, which is like about 45 minutes south of where I was going to school at the time. And it was like a three consecutive weekend course. So I was like, hey, let me do that. And I did. I got into it, and it was a really, really helpful course. Very comprehensive. Like there was very little actually about English teaching, like grammar and stuff like that you would expect. There was a little bit, but mostly it was about like experiencing other cultures and trying to be like, I'm not gonna say it was like diversity training, because this was back in 2014. Things like that. We weren't as woke as we are now, but it was kind of like training you to like adapt to life in other cultures, and furthermore like adapt to life once you come back, which was interesting because I definitely experienced like re-entry shock when I came back to the United States after living abroad for 4 years. But the company I went through was called Oxford Seminars. I'll link them in the description. It's not going to be an affiliate link or anything. I just think they were a really, really good company to go through. They were relatively cheap. As I said, it was about $1,000. If you do a CELTA now, I think it's probably going to be a lot more than that. And this was like, as I said, 9 years ago. And another thing is that if you go through Oxford Seminars, they have other certifications that you can take. I think there's one for like TOEFL and IELTS. There's another one for like teaching English to like younger kids. And you can go check out all their certificates on their website. And they have online training, and they have like in-classroom training as well, like what I did. But another thing that was nice about Oxford Seminars was that they were super easy. I had a couple friends that I worked with and that I have been in contact with since, who have done CELTA with other companies before, and they said that it was absolute nightmare. The tests were difficult. They had to take them twice, and then they had to pay to take them or like retake them. You're not going to get that with Oxford Seminars. Like everybody in my class, and there was probably like 20 of us, every single one of us passed on the first try. You're set up for success. They're not going to like, if you show up, at very least, you're going to pass very easily. So let's talk about how I got this job in Saudi Arabia. So after I had taken my TESOL certificate from Oxford Seminars, I think it was like the very last semester that I was in college. It was 2015. and I was about to graduate. So this must have been like around sometime like during this time of year, like March in 2015, when I began to like apply for these jobs online. I don't remember exactly what the websites were that I went through. I think there was only one that I found at the time. But I just Googled it. I was like, teaching jobs for TESOL or ESL or EFL, or just a ton of different acronyms for teaching English. And there were 3 countries that I found that were like decent opportunities. One was in Turkey. The next one was in China. And the third one was in Saudi Arabia. So I applied to all 3 of these jobs, and I got hired at all 3 of them. I got an interview with the Turkey job first, and I think it was going to be in Ankara, or it was going to be in maybe Istanbul or something like that. But essentially, it was a really, really bad deal. They were not going to pay my plane ticket to come over, which I understand why countries don't do that now. I thought it was a ripoff at the time, but I realize why they don't do that now after experiencing what I did. There was a guy that I worked with when I first got to Saudi Arabia. That's all this guy did, was he would just get like free tickets and work for like a week and then quit his job and then like travel. You know, he was like a nomad or whatever, and just like was cheating people out of it. So I get it now. But, I mean, I was just a poor college student. I wasn't going to be able to pay my tickets. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to be able to do that. So, and plus the pay in Turkey was pretty bad. If any of you guys have, like, taught English in Turkey, I would be interested to know, like, what the tutoring, like, side jobs are like there. Because that's kind of how you'll find out later when I talk about it in the video. That's going to be like how you're going to make a lot of side money and side hustle in the English teaching realm. I wonder what that's like, what that market is like in Turkey. Like if the average person is wealthy enough to like take on English teachers and pay them handsomely, because I got paid pretty well. But in any case, I didn't accept the Turkey job, and I was like, thank you, respectfully, I have to decline because I can't really pay my own way. Next, I got an interview with a Chinese school, and I wasn't really excited about this one because it was going to have to be teaching younger kids, and I have kids, I have little kids now, especially. And I don't mind them, but like being in a classroom environment with them in a foreign country, like it was just, it was going to be a stretch for me. But I was willing to do it. The interview was hilarious. So I got this email from this lady from the school. She told me that I was going to basically teach a lesson to children via Skype. So I prepared this whole English lesson about body parts and learning the different body parts in English and stuff like that. And when it comes time for the interview, there are no kids. She's pretending to be a 5-year-old kid in this Skype call. And so here I am singing Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes to this grown woman who's like my age. And she's pretending to be a little kid. Anyways, I passed the interview, and the China deal was pretty good. Like, I think it was going to be in Beijing, and the pay was going to be pretty good. It was going to be about like 2,500, 2,700, something around there. They were not going to pay for my plane ticket, but they did promise that they were going to reimburse me for the plane ticket, which I thought was pretty cool. And so I accepted the job in China. Shortly thereafter, however, I got a call back from the job that I applied to in Saudi Arabia. And they said, hey, look, it's Ramadan right now. We're interested. We want to hire you, or we want to do an interview with you. But it's Ramadan right now, so can we wait and do it after Ramadan? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So I was like, let me hold out for that. So I didn't. I don't think that I was going to be leaving for China for quite some time, anyways. So I was like, I'll just hold off and I'll do this interview whenever. And I remember waiting forever for them to get back to me, but eventually they did. They got back to me. I did a phone interview. I think they called me on like WhatsApp or something like that, and they just talked to me briefly, and I got hired. And they sent me like this stack of medical paperwork that I had to do. And after going through the military entrance procedures, I can tell you that what I did to go to Saudi Arabia medically was like twice as much as what the military made me do. It was absolutely insane. Like they had me give like a stool sample, urine sample, like 10 different blood samples. They were doing like chest x-rays, everything. It was the most thorough medical exam I've ever been through in my entire life. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I guess they have really high standards for, allowing disease and whatever into their country, which is great. But anyways, it was very easy for me to pass because, thank God I'm in pretty good health, and I have always been in pretty good health. So yeah, I passed that, but it took me a long time to do that. And then as soon as I had that done, I sent my passport to the Saudi consulate, I think in Washington, D.C., and it came back within the same week. It was really, really fast, which now that I know how slow things can be in the Saudi government system when it comes to paperwork and stuff like that, I am shocked that they got my visa and everything on my passport ready to go within the same week. That was astounding. They must have been well rested from Ramadan, I guess. But I digress. So yeah, I got that job. They booked my plane ticket, and I flew. I don't remember exactly what my flight details were, but oh yeah, let me tell you a little bit about what they told me this job was going to be. So the pay was also going to be better than China. They were going to give me health insurance. They were going to give me a place to live. That was another thing about China. They were not going to guarantee me a place to live, which is I don't know, if anyone also in the comments, if you guys have ever moved to a different country to teach English and have had to immediately find a place to live, I'd imagine that would be extremely difficult. I mean, you probably shack up with other teachers for a while until you can get your own apartment or whatever, but I was grateful that Saudi Arabia was going to do all this for me. So I just basically had to worry about teaching and then collecting a ton of money. But they did tell me that this job was going to be in Riyadh. And when I flew to Riyadh, they were so I stayed alone in this room, in this random tiny little apartment for the night. And then they came and got me in the morning, and they gave me this envelope that said, "Oh, you're being transferred to Bahah." Bahah is this tiny little city in the west part of Saudi Arabia, kind of close to Mecca. I think it's about an hour, 2 hours away from Mecca, south of Mecca, in the mountain, tucked away in the mountains. And so I got on a plane. They flew me first class there. First time I had ever flown first class in my entire life. Still to this day, the only time I've ever flown first class. And it was outstanding. It was the most dignified thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And it was Saudi Airlines, which is one of my favorite airlines to this day. I know some Saudi people say that it's not as good as Emirates or some other airlines, but I think Saudi is outstanding. Better than any American airline, that's for sure. They served me breakfast before we even took off. I got a nice reclining seat, man. Any of you guys have ever flown first class, you know what I'm talking about. It's nice. And what's even more funny is that there was another teacher who was on that flight with me, and she didn't get to fly first class. And then she complained about it, when we got off, and finally we realized that we were heading towards the same. We got picked up by the same driver, and we were headed to the same place. She was from Scotland, and yeah, she complained about it, and said that it was because she was a woman that she didn't get to fly first class, which I don't know if that's true or not, but in any case, I got to, so it was awesome. So I got to Bahah University, and the pay was really good. They paid me about 12,500 riyals a month, which equals out to about 3,300, completely untaxed. And like I said, I had all these other benefits too. But I did that for about a month or two, and then I got selected of like two men. So they wanted 2 men and 2 women to like subcontract for this other job in the local library. And I did that. And so I made like, with that other job, which, so what I had to do is when I got out of my first job, I had to go home for like maybe an hour, may have not even been a full hour, and then get back on the bus and go back into town and teach until like nighttime. And so I had, again, very little free time. But it was there that they paid me like, I think, another 5,000 to 6,000 riyals. So that was equaled out to about like 1,600. So what are we at now? I made 3,300 at my main job, and I made about 1,600 at this job. That puts me at almost just shy of like $5,000, right? I was just making shy of $5,000 at this point. And Bahah, like, I was not very well connected there. Through some of my friends that I knew from college, they had some like relatives, and I had some friends through friends that I met a group of guys in Bahah, and I would go to the majlis, as they say, or like the this little like diwania, or like this little. It was like a place where like just like a bunch of guys would get together, and like they would smoke shisha and like order food together and just hang out. And there were a couple professors from the university that would go there and hang out with us. It was mostly guys from the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, because that's where all my friends are from. So yeah, we, I would have them come pick me up. I lived kind of far away. The accommodation that they put us in was kind of far out of town, but essentially that's like, what I did. And that first year, that's how I lived. I didn't really have a lot of tutoring opportunities. In fact, I don't really remember tutoring anyone when I lived in Bahah. But that was the first time that I really had like a good chunk of money. I was making, like I said, about $4,900 a month untaxed, working quite hard. But that was better than either of my parents were making at the time. So I was really happy. And when I came home that summer, that was 2016, I blew all the money that I saved. I blew it all on like frivolous stuff. I spent like a crap ton of money on Amazon, like buying like chef knives and like just stupid stuff. I bought myself a car, but I didn't even buy myself like a good car. I got myself a Suzuki Sidekick because I thought it would be cool to like drive on the beach and pick up girls and stuff like that. I don't know, that's stupid, but I still have the car. But it's old. It's as old as I am now. Because I think it's like a 1988. They stopped making them like a long time ago. But so I bought a car. Bought chef knives, bought like a bunch of like little stupid stuff, and I started dating this girl, or seeing this girl, down in Detroit during that summer, and I was seriously trying to get married. That was like my next step in life. So that's, I got in contact with this Muslim girl, and we were trying to take this relationship seriously, and so I spent a good portion of my money that summer driving the 4 hours back and forth from Detroit to northern Michigan, where I was living. And by the time I went back, I didn't really have much savings. But that's not the end of the story. My second year, when I came back to Saudi Arabia, I did not go back to Bahah. The company that I was working for actually lost that contract. And so we stayed in Riyadh, and all the teachers that were in Bahah, we moved to fill slots in Imam Mohammed bin Saud Islamic University, and that's where I taught for the next 3 years. Again, my base pay was about 12,500 riyals. And eventually, I got another similar job like what I had before at a local academy teaching English under the table, meaning there was no contract really, which is kind of sketchy, to be honest with you. If you end up doing something like this in Saudi Arabia, just be very careful, because on one hand, I think it's probably illegal for you to do that. It's illegal for them to do that, that's for sure, without, at least it used to be. I don't know if it is anymore, because I know they've done away with the kafala system and the sponsorship system, but anyways, they were paying me completely under the table, which means like they could just like withhold pay from me at any time, which sometimes they didn't pay me on time, but for the most part they were pretty good at it. And what's more is it's risky for them, because you can quit at any time. You can just like get up in the middle of a lesson and walk out, actually, and they really can't do anything. They can't call the police. You're not under contract. So it's kind of a risk on both parts. But to cut a long story short, I was able to make like twice my salary doing this, because they paid me about like 10 grand as an American. And by the way, Americans in Saudi Arabia are, I will say, in my experience, by far the most desired English teachers, especially white Americans. I don't know exactly why that is. Like some places you probably find just as much luck being like British, but the school that I worked for did not want British at all teaching in their English department. I think there was like they had a bad experience or whatever with British teachers, which it's probably the individual. It has nothing to do with him actually being British. But everywhere I went, like I seemed to be like and all my fellow teachers told me this too. They were like, dude, you get so many more opportunities than us because you're, a white American. Because a lot of people that were teaching English with me were like other Americans, but they were like, there wasn't actually a lot of Americans, but there were a ton of British, and they were like Somalis British or like Pakistani British. And like I said, they kept on telling me like, yeah, you're getting all these opportunities, and I did feel that way actually. Like I was probably the highest valued teacher in my company, with hands down, and it wasn't because of my skill level. I just started teaching English. I was not like a veteran to this at all. But I did find a lot of fortuitous opportunities, most likely as a result of, just me being who I am. But as I said, they paid me about 10,000 riyals to teach at this academy. And again, that was like a night job, which is, I think, 10,000 riyals, about like 2,500 a month, something like that. So if you take like my 3,300 plus my 2,600, what's that put me up to? Just under 6,000. So yeah, I was just with those two jobs alone, I was taking up a ton of my time. But my night job didn't start until like a little bit later at night. I think it started, my first lesson, I had 2 lessons. One of them started at like 7, something like that. And so I had a little bit of time in between. And what I ended up doing is I got really well connected at the university. As I said, I was in the English language department. So eventually what they did is they split us, all the teachers, up, and we like went to different departments. There was a couple of older veteran English teachers. I think there was a couple of them from South Africa, and an old British dude. They sent them to the medical students, like the really gifted English speakers. And then they sent me to the English language department, where like all the English majors were studying. Excuse me. And so me and one other American were teaching in the English language department, and I got really well connected there. The head of the English department was this Jordanian guy, and he invited me to his house all the time. He was an older dude, like he was probably in his like 60s. He was probably the same age as my dad, maybe older. But he would invite me over, like when his family would leave the country, and he'd be alone. He'd invite me over to like watch TV, and he'd make food and stuff like that. He was a really, really nice guy, and through him, like I got a bunch of other opportunities to like tutor. He was putting my number out and like giving it to a ton of people, so I ended up having like way more tutoring gigs than what I could actually I had my choice, really. And it got to the point where I actually didn't really want to take on anymore, because the load that I had at this point was just insane. As I said, like I had almost no free time at all. I was working from the time I woke up early in the morning, and I wake up before eventually when I got married, I wake up before my wife did, and she taught at another university. So I got to work at like, I think 8 o'clock, or my first lesson was at 8, I think, or slightly before that. We would work, up until like 2 o'clock, and then we had a block of time until like we had to go to my night job. Like I said, like at 7 at night. So I tried to fill that time, especially when I was single. I filled that time with like tutoring gigs, and like I said, I got to the point where I didn't even want to do it, so I was just like throwing ridiculous numbers out at people. I was like, all right, I'll tutor your son for like 1,200 riyals a month, like just like ridiculous. And I didn't actually even expect a lot of these people to respond to me, but I vastly underestimated the amount that these guys were willing to pay to have somebody just like an actual American come sit with their kids, because there's some sort of like I learned that in the Saudi society and culture, there's some sort of like prestige to that. So that's what I did. I got like 2 of these gigs where I would go and I would sit with these students, and the 2 that I had, they were pretty bad in English, I would say. They were students of like other universities. I think one of them may have went to my university, but he wasn't in my department, and he was pretty bad in English. But basically, I would just go there like 4 or 5 days a week for like an hour and a half, and I would sit, converse with him about like anything, help him with his homework, whatever it is, and then just cash out. And I made a ton of money. So between those 2, I made like I think I talked him into paying me like about 1,000 riyals a week. Yeah, 1,000 riyals a week, by the way, is like maybe like $200, something like that. 2, 4, 6, 8. So each of these guys alone was paying me like $800. It was over $800 a month to just tutor their kids. And I had, like I said, I had 2 of those. So that filled up the time kind of in between my jobs, and I had very little free time, but I was making a ton of money. And I was living life. I was like taking all of my colleagues like out to eat and stuff like that. It was, it was the high life. I enjoyed it, and really I just like saved up a bunch of money living like that to eventually get married, which I did in 2018. It was the year before I left. I married my wife. I met her through her brother is a friend of a guy who I met, a sheikh actually, at another friend's wedding. So it's weird like how these things all kind of like come together, but it worked out like that. I met her, and then it turns out she lived actually down the road from me while I was working in Riyadh. And she was working at, what was the name of her university? I forget the name of her university. It was in the north part of Riyadh. But yeah, she just lived like down the road from me. And so I went there and, you know, met her. And I didn't like her at first. We didn't like each other at first. But maybe in a video soon to come, I'll try to get my wife on the channel. We can talk more about that. But that's it. That's how I did it. You know, Saudi Arabia is actually, like I said in the beginning of this video, it's a wonderful opportunity to make a lot of money, especially if you are willing to work a lot. You can make a ton of money because, as I said, there's a lot of my opportunities, as I said, came because I was an American, but I don't actually think that if you went to Saudi Arabia, no matter who you were, as a native English speaker, you're gonna be able to find opportunities similar to what I did. I have no doubt in my mind about that, and especially if you don't compromise, and if you immediately know your worth and you play it like, you know, you don't settle. You put a price tag on your time, and you don't take anything less than that. I think that you're going to find that you're going to be extremely successful if you do that. So that's really all that I have to say about that. If you guys have any questions about things that I talked about in this video, please shoot them in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that I can. Otherwise, like the video, share, subscribe to see more content. I don't really do a whole lot of videos like this, but I would like to do them more in the future. I had a really good time living in Saudi Arabia, and I'm definitely going to go back. Obviously, I'm tied to the country now, so I definitely plan on going back to live at some point. But yeah, if you got any questions, use the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.